morning or afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from, and welcome to this webcast on navigating through an individual 1040 tax return with your new software. Over the next half hour or so, we'll go over the basic features of your professional tax software, then look at the simple steps involved with completing a return. After watching this webcast, if you have further questions about your software or would like additional assistance personalizing your software for your specific business, be sure to check with your service provider and they will be happy to help you out. Now, a great way to start is to go over some of the basic features and functionalities, so as they're being discussed later in the webcast, you'll know what it is that we're referencing. And we'll start with what's known as the WorkinProgress Summary. This is your landing page. When you log into the program, this is the first place you'll come to. Now to start, we're going to go to the left-hand corner up here, and you'll notice that there are three tabs: 1040 Returns, Business Returns, and Website. Now you default into the program into your individual returns, which is exactly where we are, and this is your work in progress summary, and it accounts for all the different returns that you started on this particular application for individual tax returns. If you're also subscribing to doing business returns, you'll notice you'll be able to click to the business returns landing page, and it'll take you to a very similar place, only specifically dedicated to business returns. And finally, the third tab you'll notice is for website, and this you can link to your service provider's website. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to our 1040 returns because that's the landing page when you come into the program. And we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the other tools that you'll use. Below the tabs, you'll find your menu bars: database, setup, utilities, so on and so forth. And in actuality, these will change somewhat when you're actually in a return. From the work in progress page though, the menu bar is oftentimes used to go ahead and do some of your setup work as well as look at some of the reports that are available to you. Now below that, you're going to find your toolbar. And in your toolbar, you'll notice function keys that allow you to do different things within the program. I just clicked on Add New, and this is actually what would be used when you want to start a return. These function keys, as part of the toolbar, will also change when you're working within a return itself. Now that we've gone ahead and identified the tabs up on top, followed by our menu bar and then toolbar, it's time to take a closer look at the work in progress summary itself. And as I said before, this is kind of a state of your business at any given time, and it's made up of different queues. Take a look here and you'll see that there's a tax return queue, a printing queue, a transmit queue on your right-hand side, as well as an exceptions and rejects. We'll just take a minute or so to look through these, and we'll start with your tax return queue. And you'll notice this is where you actually have an accrual of all the different tax returns that have been started on this particular application. And if you'd like to look at one in particular, you can simply click on it, go to Go, and there's a listing of all the different returns that have been started on this particular application. And please note, if you want to go into any one of them, you can simply click on it and it will take you literally to that return. Coming back to my work in progress, still in the tax returns queue, you'll notice that there's a status summary list. And this status summary list will literally tell you where all the different returns that you started on this application reside, meaning that you know they are in different stages of being completed. You can go ahead and take a look and see where they might be. Continuing down, you'll also notice that there are training returns capabilities within your tax return queue, meaning if you want to practice on tax returns and have those returns not counted in your total counts over the course of the year, you can certainly go to training returns. And then finally, TaxPass mobile app retrieval. And TaxPass mobile app retrieval, you can go ahead and click on this, and if you're utilizing TaxPass mobile apps, meaning that your taxpayers are sending you information by mobile apps, you'll find that information here. Now you'll go ahead and have to click on it, and if there are any that have been sent to you by your customers, you'll go ahead and you'll find it at this location. Continuing down, we have a printing queue, and you'll notice in your printing queue itself, you'll be able to print your checks, and you'll have a check register, and you can actually literally go ahead and even void checks if you need to. But this is dependent on whether or not you are using the program to do your check printing. And this will be between you and your financial institution, or the banking partner that you've chosen. Some of them will be using their own sites, but if they are using our site to go ahead and add and do these types of things, you notice you can go to a check registration, and here you'll see a list of the checks that need to be printed. You'll also see a register and the ability literally to find your check inventory. But again, please remember that this is only going to be the case if you're printing through the program. If you're printing instead, you're printing your checks through the bank software, that's where you'll go to do that type of thing. Now, on the right-hand side up in the corner, you'll see the transmit queue. And this is a list of all the different things that you have in your program at any given time that are queued up and ready to be transmitted to central site. And what do we mean by central site? That's literally coming through the software so that it can be dispersed either to your bank or to the IRS or to both. Okay? So we have a transmit queue, and of course you'll always want to check this at the end of each day and transmit anything that's been queued up. And finally, on your right-hand side, you have something that's known as your exceptions and rejects. Now, if I went back over to the left-hand side, you'll notice that, again, if I went to my status summary list, one of the things that you'd find here is anything that was rejected by the IRS. And you'll notice there are 8 of those. Well, one of the things is that we understand how important those are. And the reason why we understand that if something's been rejected by the IRS, of course, that means that until it gets cleared, there isn't going to be any funding that takes place. No funding takes place. That, of course, means that you as the tax professional, you're not being paid either. So we put a special queue in place simply for exceptions and rejects. And if you find something that is actually in reject status, you can click on it. Here are the list of the 8. And you click on it again, click on any one of these. It'll literally give you the information in plain English as to what the issue is. On top of that, if you click on it again, it'll take you literally to the field where the issue resides. So remember, a nice feature in this is to always take a look at your work in progress specific to your federal rejects, because guess what? If there is an issue to be fixed, you'll know about it right away. Now, the other 2 things that you'll see over here on in this particular queue is pending remote signatures and completed remote signatures. Why that's important is if you're utilizing remote signature capability, this is where when you have sent something out to one of your tax-paying clients, you'll see that it is registered in the pending line, and if it's been completed and sent back, you'll find it on the completed remote signatures. So in a nutshell, what you're seeing is kind of the state of your business. As I had said a little bit earlier, you can get information on your tax returns, on anything that's ready to be printed, anything that's in a transmit queue, and anything that's in exceptions and rejects, as well as pending remote signatures and completed remote signatures. Now, one last thing to take a look at here while we're in the work in progress. I'm going to go back up to my setup, and please understand that if I went to my setup wizard, which is what you're going to see the first time that you log in, it allows the user to quickly navigate and complete the program setup, and that each one of the buttons on the wizard correlates with the setup of one of the screens. A check mark next to each section will signify that the information has been completed, while an X signifies that the information is incomplete or hasn't been provided. Very important that the first time you come through as you're doing your setup, take advantage of this setup wizard. It'll help you get through and get you ready for game day, or getting ready so that you can go ahead and transmit tax returns. Now that we've looked at the different elements that make up the work in progress summary, including the tools that are available to you, it's time to go ahead and start a return. And in order to do that, you'll simply go up to your toolbar and you can go to Add New. And when you add new, it'll ask you to go ahead and put a social security number in and then confirm it. Now, for the sake of time, I've gone ahead and started one, so I'm going to go back into my work in progress very quickly. And if I go to my work in progress, I can go to Go, and I'll take a look at one that I've just started recently. Okay? And when I come into the forms itself, in other words, the 1040 form that I'm doing for this particular social security number, the first thing you'll notice is that you're on something that's known as your client data screen. Now, your client data screen is simply the information that pertains to the taxpayer, and you'll complete that information before you go ahead and start adding forms or completing the return itself. And in the program itself, one of the things that's very nice is there are 3 different ways that you can complete a return. You can use a forms-based approach, which is what we're doing right here, which is the most common for people that are experienced in doing tax returns. What's forms-based mean? You'll simply complete your client data, whether it has to do with what the filing status is, whether there's spousal information, address, so on and so forth. And then from there, you'll go ahead and you'll add the forms that are appropriate. In other words, you control the software. You'll do the client data, and then you'll add the forms as you see fit. And when you add the forms, you'll notice that when you add form, it'll take you immediately to your your income resource forms, a W-2. So you'll want to complete your W-2s and any kind of income source forms first. And from that, you can go ahead and then add any other forms that you want, such as schedules, state-related forms, and then your filing forms. Okay? You'll notice also that there are tabs here. These are federal forms that we're working on here. You'll also have an index that's available to you so that if you know the name of a particular form but you forget the number, you can go to your index and type that information in. You'll also notice that there are state forms that are available to you. So all the state forms, depending on what state you might be located, are simply available to you as well. Now that's a forms-based approach. And again, to circle back around, I'm going to go ahead and close this. I start with my client data, which I'll complete, and then I would add forms. And when I add forms, I'm in control of the software. I'm adding my forms, completing those forms, and then I'll go through my verification stage. Now, another way that you can actually complete your return is to simply go to the 1040 itself. We have some people that want to go ahead and just fill out the return from top to bottom. And if you went to the 1040 right here, you could literally start at the beginning and go ahead and work your way down the list itself. You can work down the form from beginning to end. So you have the forms-based approach and then just working through the 1040 itself. Now, a last way in which you can go ahead and do a return is also known as interview. Now, in the first two, you're controlling the software. Actually, if you think about it, the forms-based, you're controlling the software. If you're using the 1040 form itself, you're just following the natural route of completing a 1040. The third way that you can complete a return in the program itself is to go through the interview mode. And there, you're allowing the program to go ahead and ask you questions. And as it asks you questions, you can go ahead and complete the information in order to complete the return for the taxpayer. So in other words, instead of you controlling it by adding the forms, you will simply answer the questions that the interview mode takes you through. And when you do so, what it will do is take you or add the appropriate forms that are needed. And again, if you use interview, you can do so by you see the pictures that are here, or also switch to the Express or icon. We have icon as well as script. I'm sorry. So here we've got the icon, and here we have the script. Okay. So please remember, first thing, there are 3 different ways in which you can go ahead and do a return itself. You can use a forms-based approach, which people that are experienced in doing tax returns generally want to do. Or what you can do is you can do down the 1040, or you can go ahead and use an interview method as well. Now, one last thing to do, or at least to note when you're in the client data itself, is that there are times you're going to have a taxpayer that might come into your office and be looking for an estimation. Please note that up here in our return on the pull-down menu, something that's different that you'll see in the work in progress summary, but now that we're in a return, from the pull-down menu, you see that there is a tab that says return. And within return, there's a tax estimator. You can go ahead and go to your tax estimator and complete information about the taxpayer based on the information that he or she provides to you and give that person an estimate in real time. What's really nice is on top of that, if you give an estimation and that particular individual now wants you to do their tax return, you can pull that information directly into the tax return itself. One last thing to remember about your tax estimator is that the more information that you put into the tax estimator itself, the better the calculation will be. So please remember, less information from the taxpayer, less accurate with regard to the tax estimation as to whether or not the individual will have a refund coming or not, or what that amount might be. Now let's go back to the client data. There are a couple other things that we want to point out. Down at the bottom, you'll see something that's called your active window. I've got it circled right here. And you'll notice what it will do is first, wherever field you are in the program itself, it will tell you exactly what's being required. And that's why it's such an easy software to learn for people that have never used it before. Let's use an example where we're landed right here. You'll notice that we're in the DOB field. Now, I'm sure most, if not all of you know that DOB simply means date of birth. But what if you didn't know what DOB meant? You could come down here and simply look, and it would give you that information. One of the things that we like to say whenever training this particular program is, if you don't know, simply look below. Any field you're in the program itself, it'll tell you exactly what it's looking for. Now, on top of that, the active window has 3 other different icons. They're all shadowed out right now, but when they become available, you'll see that they're highlighted. You'll see that there are choices, there are worksheets, and there are form links. In any instance, if you happen to be in a particular field and there's a correlating choices that might be available, or if there are worksheets or there are form links, you'll find them available to you and highlighted. Okay? So in a nutshell, we've covered everything that you'll see as part of your landing page when you come into a return. Again, you are on the client data, you're going to complete that, and if you want to use the forms-based approach, you go ahead, complete this information, and then add forms before you start your verification process. And as you add forms, they will be part of your attached forms list. Oh, and at the same time, as you begin to add additional information, you'll notice that where you'll see this red federal zero right here, what will happen is that'll give you a running total based on the information that's been entered as to whether or not a customer has a refund coming back or if they owe money. So using a forms-based approach, you add your forms, or if you choose, you can go into the 1040 itself and simply work down the program. And by the way, as we're doing this, let's go ahead and take a look. Let's say I'm on line 7, adjusted gross income. And if I were on that and I was looking for some information, you'll notice there'd be correlating form links that would be available to me that would take me to the places that I need to go or the forms I need to use in order to calculate this particular field. Back to my client data. We can also remember that up here in my toolbar is my interview approach, and that means that if I choose, I can have the program help me figure out what forms are needed by simply going to an interview-based approach. And I'll go ahead and click on it one more time to note that there are two different ways. First of all, you can go to script or you can go to icon. Okay? So if you have a new preparer in your office, you can go ahead and have them use that approach. Or if you are more experienced or as your people become more experienced, you can go ahead and make sure that they're using the forms-based approach simply because that's the fastest way to get through a return from top to bottom. Now at this point, we've looked at the different ways that you can complete a return. We're in interview mode right now. We talked about forms-based where you put the client data and then add the forms yourself, or even going straight down the 1040. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and close this return and we're going to look at one that's completed. Let's go back into our work in progress, and from there, we'll go ahead and choose a return that's farther along the line, if you will. And let's see which one I'm going to choose right here. I'll go ahead and open this up, and you'll notice right away that your attached forms will be complete with all the different forms that have been added to this particular return. Plus, you'll notice that the refund shows $7,103 based on an adjusted gross income of $21,515. What's next? Well, after you've added the forms, you need to do a verification to see whether or not everything's ready for the IRS, ready for transmission, if you will. And how do you do that? You go back up to your toolbar and you'll see a verify key. Let's go ahead and click on your verify key. And what's going to happen is if there's anything that's in error status, it's going to bring it up right away. In this particular instance, the first one says driver's license expired. If I want to click on that, I can go directly to the field in the program itself in which the error is found. Right here, you'll notice in the client data, there's the expiration that has passed with regard to this particular return. So you want to make those corrections, and you can go through every one of them until you're verifying the return clean. In order to save a little bit of time, let's go ahead and close this return, and I'll take you to one that is clean and ready for transmission. So we're going to go back in here, and we'll take a look at another one. And when I open it up, here again are the attached forms with a running total. In this particular instance, the taxpayer has $2,080 coming back based on an adjusted gross income of $13,544. I go up to my verification stage, or verifying again, and it verifies clean. That means it's ready to print and transmit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And what's next on this is the idea of going to my print icon. Again, up in my toolbar, go to print, and you're going to be given some choices. If you'd like to print the document yourself, you can do that right here. In fact, you can even do a print preview if you like by going down here. But most people are trying to get away from using a lot of paper, and the program's great with regard to how it can help you out in that regard as well. There are two very important ways that you want to look at this. First of all, if you'd like the individual to sign the document and you have a signature pad, you'll go ahead and sign doc. And of course, that's where you'll go ahead and sign. And then what will happen is it will render it into a PDF, and you can file it into the document archive, which you find over here in your forms, attached forms list. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that because the other way that you can do it is remote sign. And if you go ahead and click on remote sign, you can literally send information to the taxpayer so that he or she can sign it remotely using his smartphone or her smartphone. We'll go ahead and cancel this at this particular point. And again, a quick way of running through this is you start with your verification stage. You'll verify for any kinds of errors. And at that point, you're going to make sure that it's clean. And then, of course, the next thing that you're going to want to do is go through your printing stage. And this is where you're going to go ahead and you're going to gather your information or gather your signatures from your customer. And then whether you're going to go ahead and go paperless or if you want to print the return, you can do either of those at this particular point. At this point, we've gone through most of the fundamentals involved with completing a tax return. But there is one important feature in the program I'd still like to showcase before we finish up this particular webcast, and that has to do with your document archive. Just a moment ago, I was talking about the different ways that you can gather signatures from your customers. What we also want to remember is that as you get these things signed, whether it be a remote signature or you're signing the document using a signature pad, in either instance, what will happen is that it will then be rendered into PDF and land in your document archive. This allows you to go paperless, if you will. You do not have to keep a printed copy of a particular return. What's really nice about this document archive also is as you want to gather information or different pieces of identification or things that are relevant to the tax return from the taxpayer, you can go ahead and use the same document archive to collect this information. How do you do that? Well, you'll notice that there's an import key. And what that simply means is that if you have a copy machine with scanning capabilities, you can scan documents from your particular taxpayer. At that point, from your machine, you can go ahead and import that information so that it resides in your document archive right here. So please remember the importance of the document archive as a way of keeping the information relevant to a particular return, as well as the return itself. As you get signatures from the customer, you can keep copies in your document archive. A very, very important feature to help you drive costs out of your business, which is, again, one of the ways that you go ahead and make more money over the course of the season. Utilizing your archive allows you to gather signatures and have those stored in your particular return without having to have print copies. And it also allows you to import things that you've scanned, such as social security numbers, proof of work, whether it be W-2s, whatever you want to do. Get those copies from your customer and then go ahead and scan them, and then you can import them into your archive so that they're tied to that particular return. At this point, we really have covered the fundamentals of navigating through a 1040 with your software, but I would like to leave you with a couple of different points before we go ahead and wrap this webinar up. Let's go ahead and close this return, and we're going to go back to our work in progress. Great place to start. Please remember the importance of your training returns. Regardless of how much education you get, how much training you get before a season, the best thing you can do is go ahead and make sure that you practice a couple of times. You know the importance of being ready come the beginning of tax season. The best way to do that is go ahead and do some practice returns yourself. And when you're doing those types of things, make sure that you're doing it in your training returns. And the reason why you want to do that is so that you don't have the results go towards your actuals for the year itself. That's number one. Number two is remember the importance of your work in progress summary. It will give you up to the minute or in real time statuses of your particular application you're working from, whether it be the tax returns that you've accrued on this particular application, as well as what's waiting to be transmitted, or even anything that might be in an error status. Please make sure that you look at your work in progress at the beginning and at the end of each of your work days. Well, the best way or the rule of thumb we always like to use is, hey, you want the number of returns increasing at the same time making sure your transmit queue is clear and your exception and rejects are clear. And if you happen to be using the software to print your checks, that this is cleaned up as well. Now, again, remember when it comes to the printing queue, you very well may be working with your banking partner instead and using their software to print your checks. Okay? One last thing that I didn't talk about a little bit before in your work in progress itself are these other items. And the most important thing to realize is this is where you get your software updates. Go ahead and take a look at those software updates. And when you see those, you'll want to make sure that you transmit to Central Site so that your updates are in place. That's about it for this particular webcast covering navigating through a 1040 in your brand new software. Congratulations, you've made a great selection by using this software. And always remember to go to your service provider if you'd like further information, especially as you're preparing for the season or doing your setup work. With that, we'll call this a wrap, and we'll talk to you again next time.